I've played every class in 5th edition to this point. I wish I could find a new system that offers something more. Oh well.
Hey, little boy, have you tried Over the Edge? It'll take you places.
I do like going places.
Hey kid, do you want to be a distributed intelligence operating an army of cyber dolphins?
Do I?
Hey, kid, do you want to try dying?
But Cyber Dolphin.
But Space Marines. Sold. Freeze. Have you talked to your children about role-playing games? Today on Unqualified Experts, we are talking about our favorite role-playing games outside of 5th Ed D&D. Because if we don't, these guys will.
Hello, everyone! Welcome to another episode of Unqualified Experts. I'm your host, Braden Gardner.
Corrupt Overlord Shane Dayton.
I'm Nathan, I'm a problem.
And Al.
And I'm Ben.
We're very fortunate to have Nathan and Ben with us here today as our special guests to talk about RPG systems outside of D&D. We've played games with them in a variety of systems for years at this point, so they seem like the perfect experts to bring on to talk about other things you can play besides 5th edition D&D if you're looking for something a little more outside the mold than what you're going to get out of a 5th edition book. So we're going to go ahead and just get the problem out of the way first. And we'll let Nathan tell us a little bit about his favorite non-D&D system.
Yes. And for my non-D&D system, I have selected Eclipse Phase. One of the fun things about Eclipse Phase before we get going is that it has in fact been released by the creators free to download on their website. So if you want to get started with it, you can just do that. It's got all the books. Feel free. So, into the system. Eclipse Phase is a D100 system, so for most rolls you'll be rolling 2d10 to figure out what you're doing with everything. It's, I would say, a moderately crunchy system in how these things are categorized for the most part. You have your core attributes, and then you have a whole bunch of skills that all get tracked individually. And depending on what your attributes are, they will boost your skills a little bit, and they'll give you a whole bunch of other dependent things. It's, once you get the hang of it, it's typically relatively simple to run. It makes intuitive sense, to me at least, because I like D100 systems, but it is definitely very different from D&D. To start off, just want to briefly go over the 7 attributes, because none of them have the names that you would expect. Rather than strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, willpower, and charisma, you have cognition, coordination, intuition, reflexes, savvy, somatics, and willpower.
Someone found their thesaurus.
That's why I've got a book. So, each of those is basically parallel to the D&D ones, with a little bit more nuance, which I won't get into here. But basically, Eclipse Phase takes place in a sci-fi future. It's relatively close to us. I think it's about 200 to 400 years, something like that. If you've seen Altered Carbon, then you already know about kind of the core feature of the system, and that is your body is not permanent. I'm not talking magical revivals. I'm talking you have a chip in the back of your head that they can yank out, jack into another body, and you are now that person. There is no faster than light travel. There are aliens, but only one, and they don't like you very much. And There was a very good chance that when Earth got super wrecked by first a gigantic super AI that tried to eat people's brains, and then by the subsequent bombardment by people who didn't like them, chances are you died, but because your mind is now data, it's been uploaded and hopefully downloaded back into something else, unless they just chucked you in storage for a while.
I love the idea of purgatory being like a cargo storage on some space station
Oh yeah,
outside of the moon.
it's literally just the target back room.
That's a deep cut. I respect that.
Bring back a Braden today or a Shane? Man.
I'm not really excited about either.
So, Eclipse Phase is relatively standard as far as systems go. Where it really shines is in character creation. So, obviously, you figure out what your stats are. There are a couple ways to do it. It's got a point buy. I believe it has a rolling system, but it's whatever your DM wants to do with it. Then you go on to choose your background, where you figure out who you were before everybody tried to kill everything. You can be just a normal human. No chip in the back of your head, no tech, nothing. And those are called flats, and they die very quickly. You can have been created as a lower level AI and then given a body, either cybernetic or biological, because it doesn't make a difference. They're functionally the same as far as putting brains in them goes. You can be an upgraded person. You can be a cyber dolphin, and what I mean by a cyber dolphin is a dolphin that has mechanical legs that let it walk around, because humanity has figured out how to uplift animals, which is super fun.
I'm going to need The Simpsons to stop predicting the future. Okay, thanks.
Unfortunately, they've already predicted all of humanity.
I'm going to need them to stop.
Or if you are like this man here, you can be a swarm of tiny robots that is very, very annoying.
Also very convenient, because basically each of your hit points is a tiny robot. It's a really easy way to keep track of how big your swarm is.
This is accurate. So, in general, you have all sorts of bodies that you can pick. You have all sorts of modifications that you can do to those bodies to make them do exactly what you want them to do. I had him playing a swarm of robots. I've had another person playing as a giant lizard man. I've had a dude playing as a child who was basically like 30 and a nuclear engineer. I cannot express how varied your bodies can be in this. And that's before we get to things like traits. These basically fill the same role as feats in D&D, though typically you can't buy them just with experience. A lot of the time they get assigned, or you can pick them up at character creation. But they're functionally that. As I mentioned, there are all of the biomods that you get to pick once you've actually gotten through all of figuring out what you are and who you are. And there's also a magic system, weirdly. Personally, I like it, because even though you can't throw fireballs, because it's not magic, it is an AI edited your brain so that you are basically psychic now. And it comes with problems, because having AIs edit your brain is not a good thing.
It could be.
I was doing one.
Definitely could be. Unfortunately, that does highlight one of the problems with the system that I personally have, which is that while going insane is somewhat robust, the actual effects of going insane are not. So you may need to do some tweaking, but there is the skeleton of a good system there, so you can probably come up with something pretty good. In general, the system has almost every major thing in the solar system fleshed out. You probably can't start on Earth because you will die very quickly, but you could start out on Mars, where there is a colony. Specifically two sort of colonies, where you've got the rednecks and the extremely rich. You can start out in the asteroid belt, where they have all sorts of background information for a city built into the center of an asteroid. There is a habitat described in this book that is just a dude made of meat, programmed to support life inside of it.
That's Rick and Morty right there.
Yeah, that's
The system is incredibly varied, and personally, you guys know I love homebrews.
Yeah.
It's basically all I run. And Eclipse Phase, it has a wealth of things to work with for playing a homebrew. Relatively slow space travel, so there's a lot of isolation. Lots of places laid out. A fairly robust hacking system for if your people just want to be... If they just want to play basically Shadowrun in space, you can basically do that. It needs some tweaks to get to exactly where you want, but in general, you can do just about anything with it. So,
Very fair.
with
Nice.
that, let's turn it over to discussion.
So I really liked Eclipse Phase when we did your homebrew campaign of it. I basically played a mercenary and explored pretty much every gun the book had to offer, and several that it didn't. And I have to say, the variety of tools that you can have at your disposal for, oh, we accidentally made a hole in our spaceship. Well, I have this gun that basically just freezes and condenses what moisture is in the air. Let's patch it with ice. Space is cold. I'm sure it'll hold.
I mean, it worked.
It did. Or on the other side of that, oh, I have this really fancy walnut grip gun that shoots literal liquid sunlight. It is as devastating as it sounds, and it was just a marvelously crafted tool that was used on environments and enemies alike to shape battlefields.
Generally in the same shot, if I remember correctly.
You're ratting me out. I'm feeling seen. I don't know how to feel right now.
Braden sus.
It's okay,
I'm the
Brady.
best little bean.
We see you. We know you. We're gonna let you kill.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But going off of what you said and touching on something that you said, utilizing the tech that's available in the system is a great way for you to actually expand your character, especially because unlike other systems like D&D, generally you use feats or, you up your attributes or whatnot as you level up. You can't really do that in Eclipse Phase, but you can make up for that with your equipment. Like my swarm guys. I had 2 nanohives. 1 nanohive basically allowed me to heal myself because it took scrap material from the environment and it made more little bots. I could program it to make whatever I wanted, but I just had it make more little bots so I could heal. The other thing about it is that I also had a nanohive that allowed me to directly connect to any computer system I was touching, which meant that I could directly hack in. And since my character was a hacker, that was an absolute godsend. It also allowed me to hack into the entire party and give them mind speak, among other things.
Yeah, that was
We
fun.
will not talk about.
So, having not played Eclipse Phase, Shane, do any of these ideas grab you as a potential character concept?
I mean, honestly, the moment you start giving examples of characters, you guys all know how much I love being a troublemaker. I mean, quotations like, how do you mess up Pathfinder number crunching? Easily, if you're creative. So I love the sound of that because it sounds like any idea I can pretty much come up with, I can wrap a character for that. Now, I am kind of curious, whereas 5e kind of sets a framework and then gives you a lot of space to homebrew. For DMs who maybe aren't as inclined to homebrew as much as, well, all of us are, do you feel like there's a pretty good system there for a DM who feels like maybe a first-timer, who feels like they'd want a little bit more structure or support as they feel out the world?
I would say that there absolutely is. I wouldn't necessarily suggest the system for someone who is running their first game ever.
Yeah.
But if you know what you're doing running games, if you know the sorts of things that you're going to need, how to figure out what roles people are doing, things like that. Eclipse Phase is an excellent system if you just want to run it flat.
Nice.
The story in Eclipse Phase, as far as if you're just running Eclipse Phase as Eclipse Phase, is that the characters are members of an organization called Firewatch. This is a dystopian future. There are mega corporations, and they are God. Not Firewatch, Firewall. That's the one. Their job is to keep these mega corporations from just basically eating humanity and using the millions of people who they've just got shoved into warehouses as what amounts to slave labor. And it is an intrigue focused game for the most part, but if you want to do a lot of combat, you can absolutely do that. If you want to explore and find new things, if you even want to go to new worlds, the only actual faster than light travel in the system is a system left behind by the AI that killed everybody, the Titan. So you can go in there as gate crashers and just explore everything. The system itself runs excellently on its own, and in the group of PDFs that they have, I believe that they do have several adventure books. So if you want to try it out by running one of those, it's perfectly fine.
And then the one last crucial question before we move on to Mr. Ben. You will be running one of these campaigns soon, so I can get in on the fun, right? Relatively soon.
I'm not going to spoil it for you.
The non-committal answer. I have to become so used to these. Well, excellent. I look forward to that maybe or maybe not eventual adventure.
I mean, it'll be coming eventually.
Yeah.
I just can't promise when.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
The return of the bad robots. Anyway, I believe I was up next.
Yes, so go ahead and tell us about your favorite non-D&D system.
So, I had to do a lot of thinking on this. I will admit, I did have to do a lot of thinking on this because there are plenty of non-D&D systems that I have played that I have thoroughly enjoyed. However, I do have to go with 40K.
That's a lot of books.
These are 4 of the 5 core books that were released by Fantasy Flight in their initial run of the 40K universe. The only one that I'm missing in hard copy is one called Black Crusade. Now, the 40K tabletop game that Fantasy Flight produced is also a D10 system, specifically D100 when it comes to rolling. 1 is best, 100 is a botch. So, you want to roll from there. As far as attributes and characteristics and all that whatnot go, it's the same for every system that you're looking at, whether it's Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, Death Watch, or Only War. Your attributes, sort of like Eclipse Phase, are different in a sense than D&D. In D&D, you have 6 attributes. Here, you have 9. You have weapon skill, which is responsible for anything that you swing. Ballistic skill, which is responsible for anything that you shoot or throw. And then you move into strength, agility, toughness, intelligence, willpower, perception, and fellowship. I personally like the breakdown of the way that they do those stats because it allows you to more accurately decide what you're going to roll under. For example, if you're going to see something, hear something, whatnot, it's not your wisdom that has anything to do with it. It's your ability to perceive things. You could be as dumb as a box of rocks, but you could hear a gnat flying in the next room. Same thing with weapon skill, ballistic skill. It's not based off of your strength. Your strength doesn't dictate how good you swing a chainsword. Your dexterity doesn't dictate how good you are at shooting a lasgun. You train in these skills specifically. So the further breakdown of the attributes, I believe, can give you a better way of making your character more of a reality. From there, you have skills, and the skills you purchase with experience. You can level up just about everything in here with experience. Skills, talents, which are like D&D feats. The skills will give you bonuses based on how many levels you have purchased it. So either you roll, if you haven't bought anything, you roll at a -10. If you've bought trained, then you get to roll at your full skill. Then you have +10, +20, +30. So it can really add up as to what you want to specialize in and how you go about doing that. With talents, they allow you to do some sort of fantastic things. For example, you can have a talent that will allow you to wield 2 weapons in combat, so you can just be a whirling dervish of death. You have another talent that can allow you to go ahead and be a little bit more silver-tongued with whoever you're in the engagement with when you're rolling your fellowship. There are also talents and traits that can branch off into various other avenues. You don't know how to use a gun? Guess what? Buy a talent. Now you know how to use that gun. It goes,
Yeah.
it spreads on and on. The other thing that I like about this system is it's really, really easy to make your character overpowered. Your character can have some of the best armor, the best weapons, and you can literally get a cybernetic implant that replaces an eyeball so that you can look at someone and they die because it fired a laser through their skull. That's called a baleful eye, in case anybody wanted to know. But no matter how OP you get, there is always something out there that will just tear you a new asshole. And it could be a party member. It could be some random dude on the street who just so happens to have a melt-a-gun under the bar because you stole from him. Basically, melt-a-gun is like a 40K shotgun that fires superheated gas that's designed to melt tank armor. Shoot that at the random thief that just stole your tip jar. You'll get your tip jar back, and you won't really have to worry about cleanup.
It might be missing part of the wall, though.
True.
Sacrifices must be made.
I mean, if it was a full enough tip jar.
Indeed.
A message must be sent.
But that's the thing that really grips me about this system, is that you can make your character as overpowered as possible. You can make him as ridiculous as possible. But there's still going to be something out there that can kill you. And that's the thing that's great about the 40K universe. We have Space Marines, literally genetic engineered super soldiers that stand 8 feet tall, wearing super powerful armor, wielding weapons created in the golden age of mankind when technology was at its absolute best, being ripped apart by an orc who's angry because you're in his way and he wants to go over there.
Honestly, he's probably not even angry. He's probably happy that he got to meet you along the way.
That's true. Orcs are an entirely different thing that I'm not going to get into because that would take way too long.
Otherwise, we would starve here.
Probably. But going over each of these books here, Dark Heresy was the first book released by Fantasy Flight. And in this book, you play an acolyte of an Inquisitor. Dark Heresy is very much more intrigue-driven. You can make it, a lot more hacky-slashy. But generally what you're doing is you're going in and you're trying to solve a mystery. Why is this happening here? We've heard rumors that this planet has been talking with aliens. By the way, aliens exist. They all hate humanity, and they all want humanity dead. So humanity does the same thing in reverse. In the grim dark future, there is only war. That's literally the tagline. But, they're talking to aliens. Your little acolyte group, as in your party, is then sent to the planet to figure out, are they actually talking to aliens? What kind of aliens are they talking to? Is it actually aliens, or is it something significantly worse, like the forces of chaos? And how are you going to solve it? it's really intrigue driven. Now, the sort of flip side of that is Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader is has the potential to be an incredibly expansive game. You can build your own starship, you can fly through the galaxy, go through the stars, find things, encounter dangers that humans have never seen before, or at least have no recollection of. It's very much I'm trading my safety for freedom, and I'm going to see where I die.
Accurate.
Compelling.
It's legitimately that. Plus, Rogue Trader is the only system that allows you to play as an alien. Now we get to Deathwatch. Deathwatch allows you to play as a Space Marine. The big bad guys that I talked about before, the big bad guys of humanity who can be ripped in half by orcs. Which is ridiculous because a Space Marine can also rip an orc in half, so it's kind of a trade-off.
It's just whoever gets there first.
Exactly. Who gets hands on first?
Work on that grip.
Yeah, work on the grip strength there. But Deathwatch specifically, you're Space Marines that have been basically snagged by the Inquisition to help them deal with alien threats. For the most part. Sometimes there's some chaos involved, sometimes there's some other things involved, but generally you're dealing with alien threats. So you're marching in, you're wading in, and you're trying to figure out, what are these aliens doing? Why are they here? What's the best way I can kill them? Literally in that order. And then you have Only War, which, out of all of these systems, Only War holds a very special place in my heart. Because you play not as some acolyte of some secret government organization, not as some crazy pirate out making fame and fortune, not as some souped up Superman in super armor. You play as a normal soldier. A normal, puddly, little human, given a gun, given some armor, pointed at an arc and go, yeah, you saw him rip that Space Marine in half? Slap on the ass, go get him. Basically how it goes. Your squishiness and your vulnerability, I think, give it a much needed humanity in the game, especially when you have someone that's running the campaign well, and when you have a good group of players around you and you can really synergize off of each other how this all goes down. Utilizing tactics, utilizing your equipment as best you can is critical to getting out of that alive. Because I've killed many a character in Only War when I was running it.
Yeah, this is not a system that is PC friendly.
This is not PC friendly. That is one thing I will say. Average hit points is 13 for the duration of your character's life. Literally, from when you make it to when the campaign ends or you die, generally you have an average of 13 hit points. You can have more. You can also have less. That squishiness is tantamount to the system because it helps make sure that you're not just wading in like Conan, just swinging your sword, blowing everybody out of the way. You actually have to be kind of careful. You have to be sort of smart. Now there's two other things I will go into about this system that make it unique. Fantasy Flight's 40k system has a system in it called Fate Points. You earn your Fate Points at character creation via die roll. Fate points can range usually from 1 to 3, and they're permanent for your character. Unless you do something absolutely amazing and the DM's like, you know what? You done good. You can have another one. I've never seen that happen. Ever.
I have seen you do it exactly once. And I'm pretty sure that it was because the person you did it for, first off, only had one fate point. Mm-hmm. And secondly, because he basically negated a massive problem.
Yeah. Okay.
I think PJ did that.
Yes, it was PJ. Now, yeah, that was a while ago. Forgive my memory. But
so once in approximately 9 years.
Yes, once in 9 years that I've been running the system. But the fate points, you spend them during the game. Spending them is fine. And you can either give yourself a plus 10 before you roll, or you can spend a fate point to re-roll your roll. which is usually what everybody saves them for. And at the beginning of the next session, your fate points regenerate. They come back. So even if you're in the middle of an encounter and session ends, next session, they're all back, which can be a very nice breath of fresh air for your characters, especially when you're kind of up against a wall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that fate points can be used for is burning them. Burning them means that you permanently erase a fate point from your character sheet, but it will save you from dying. Case in point, here recently, I'm in an Only War campaign run by the Problem over here. And my character went from 19 to 1, from one enemy attacking me, and then another enemy hit me, and I dropped to negative 17. I burned a fate point, came back up to 1, and then I got healed for 5. So I'm currently sitting at 6. I'm not very happy, but I am still alive.
There will be consequences for that.
I'm fully aware that there's going to be consequences. I tried, all right? I tried my best.
I showed up at the end.
I noticed.
Yeah, I was very confused at why they left you downstairs.
Don't
Can't
roll
sleep,
badly
clown.
on your stealth checks, kids.
Can't sleep, clowns will eat me.
Yeah, pretty much.
But there's that. And the other thing that I like about the system is that all of these books can theoretically be played together. You can make characters from any of these books and have them all in the same game. The only change you need to do is that if you're running any of these others, a Dark Heresy character needs to have 5 levels of experience in order to be able to make it correctly, to balance it with everybody else. So I believe I've touched on most of the main markers.
Nice.
Pass it to you guys.
Well, I have to say, my only real experience to with the 40K universe has been in campaigns run by people at this table. And you can do a lot of ridiculous stuff, but like was pointed out, there's always someone bigger, better, and badder than you. And I like that there's always an element of risk to a decision that you're going to make. So, sure, you're a powerful psyker. You have access to all of these world-bending powers, but if you don't have any level of control over it, guess what? You might just kill your whole party using them.
Oh, that is one thing I did forget to mention. It does have a magic system. It's called Psychers, where you draw on the powers of chaos, where evil resides. And guess what? You mess up, like Braden said, you'll let evil in, and they will do weird things to you. Sometimes horrible things. Well, not sometimes, most of the time, horrible things.
Almost exclusively.
Yeah, almost exclusively. You know what? It's just bad. If you're going to use magic, don't mess up.
If you're going
Yeah.
to use magic, don't pull it out of space hell. It's a bad idea.
Unless you want to. Because, like you said, you can have world-bending powers.
You can do a lot of stuff.
But Space Cthulhu.
Oh, Space Cthulhu is the little guy off in one little part of the galaxy.
Ah,
It's everything else you want to worry about.
Yeah.
well, fair enough. That puts in perspective, doesn't it?
Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Slanesh, the 4 main gods of chaos, each factoring in their own little bits and pieces into everything. Yeah, no, it all bad stuff. And that's not even. And then you have warp stuff that isn't even allocated to them, not even aligned. It's just around and evil because it wants to be.
All I heard was, you have to make responsible decisions in the system. And my first thought was Ralph on the bus, and I'm in danger.
It's accurate.
If
Yeah.
you're gonna play 40k, I suggest making a psyker first. That way you can get it out of the way.
And you're dead. I have my next character, and he's dead. This guy should be fun.
I do think that because it's being presented immediately after Eclipse Phase, there is a point of useful comparison between these. 40k is very much an attribute-based system.
Yes.
When you're rolling, you're trying to beat your attributes, your strength, your toughness, your weapon skill. Eclipse Phase is much more skill-focused, so you're trying to beat your pilot or psychosurgery or ballistics. and that is reflected in that in 40k, typically you've got 4 boxes of skills to fill up that just add on to your attributes. Whereas in Eclipse Phase, you have an individual number that you can increase through experience for every single skill.
That is true.
I do also want to mention that, in my personal opinion, having played all of these at one point or another, Dark Heresy is probably the best for people just beginning with the system,
That is true.
because it does have a set leveling system. Like, you have rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, where you have certain things available. Personally, I think that Rogue Trader is the best of all of those. It's very freeform. You've got a lot of stuff that you can do, and it seems to go out of its way not to restrict you. It's the only one where, even if you're not playing it as an alien, you can get alien weapons. Most of the other ones that will get you shot.
Especially if you're going lore-wise with it. I will
Very
agree.
much so.
I will agree with you. If you are starting out wanting to run one of these systems, either because you find this intriguing or because you're just a 40k nerd like me and Nathan, a few other people out there, I would recommend starting with Dark Heresy, because, like you said, it is probably the friendliest way to go ahead and get in and get your characters leveled. And every book, if memory serves correctly, has a module in the back that you can run. It also has stats for enemies, and for the most part, it's relatively easy to read, it's relatively easy to run through. There are some parts of it where you kind of feel like you're pulling your teeth out of your head trying to find a certain little bit that you have a question about, but generally, it's all there on the table for you. Kind of literally.
And it's nice that these books, while they have a lot of different bits and bobs, generally speaking, are above average when it comes to general organization. You aren't going to be going through and scratching your head, like, say, with Shadowrun, going, where is this in the book again? Because it's intuitively laid out, and that's greatly appreciated for players of all skill levels.
Indeed.
Very much so.
So, resident other troublemaker,
Yo.
where are you seeing yourself in the 40k universe?
Well, it's just good
Probably
decision
dead.
making is a major part. A lot of death, although Rogue Trader's intriguing, because I've just always loved pirates, so anything with the piracy thing. You know, the opportunity where making a bad decision, maybe I get a chance to run away. That sounds like a good idea for me.
Can confirm being space pirates in Rogue Trader is absolutely fun.
I got to be the captain of the ship. I was a problem. I highly suggest it. It's super fun, and everyone hates you.
You collected bird legs.
I did,
Despite
but I also made all of you kill, like, a bunch of people. And I didn't get murdered by Space Marines or the Inquisition or aliens or the Warp until the very end, or custodians. It was a whole thing.
Despite the fact I should know better, best on PSA, based on your pitch, sold.
I see. You have made a decision this day.
I tend to do that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'd be willing to run it again.
I believe you.
Also, each of these books do have supplements for them. So if the core book isn't enough death and murder for you, you can always get the supplements and find even more death and murder out there in the form of guns, equipment, talents, enemies,
Starships.
starships. Enemies is probably the big one. So if you find that these books don't have enough enemies for you, always go for more. And I would highly recommend Only War and Death Watch for enemies, because they have some of the spikiest cuddle boys out there. Like Tyranids.
You don't want to mess with those guys. They're jerks. So, we've talked about 2 systems where the deck is pretty heavily stacked against you. So, we're going to shift gears a little bit to a system that is both less crunchy and where you actually have a shot at being the apex predator. So let's talk a little bit about my choice for my favorite non-D&D system, and that is Fireborn. So, in Fireborn, you are the reincarnation of a literal dragon. You're a person, and you basically get to inherit a bunch of things from your past life that you're just really good at, or come to you easily, or hey, this is the first time that I've ever had to run a marathon. Guess I'll give that a go. What do you mean I got first? It's pretty awesome. And the setting is also very relatable. It's an urban fantasy setting, so if you like systems like Shadowrun, you're going to enjoy Fireborn very much, and you'll have an easier time both playing in it and running it. Because the book is much smaller. It's generally well laid out, though there are a few organizational issues and some errata that you're going to want to Google periodically. But on the whole, it's a very easy system to grasp and understand. You start off creating your character, so you pick your legacy, the thing that your dragon was known for that you can also manifest in real life. You pick edges, which are basically the equivalent of D&D feats. You pick your attributes, which, unlike Eclipse Phase where there are 7, and Warhammer where there are 9.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
It's so much. You only have 4 in Fireborn, and they're very easy to remember. Fire, water, air, earth. Congratulations. If you watched Avatar, you now understand the elements that govern fire. And the skills are pretty easy to understand when you're going to use them, too. If it's a physical skill, you're going to either use fire or water. If it's a mental skill, you're either going to use air or earth. If you're actively acting, you're going to use fire or air. If you're reacting, you are going to be using water or earth. Not terribly tricky to figure out what goes where, but this system is known as a dynamic D6 system, meaning that you're not just going to roll the D6s that are affiliated with an attribute. You can also pull from a neighboring score and add a number of dice to the score in your other attribute temporarily through a stance change. Generally, you can do that pretty much whenever, unless you're in combat, in which case you're limited to twice a round. Congratulations! That's basically the system in a nutshell. If you want to get more into the nitty-gritty of combat, combat is typically done through a series of maneuvers. So let's say that you want to run forward, jump a building, and then stab a guy. You're going to need to roll your fire dice because you're going to be actively, physically attacking someone. And you're going to need to try and get at least 3 successes on your D6s. Anything that's a 4 up on a D6 is a success, 3 down is not. Super easy to keep track of. And then the number of successes you get determines how far into your string of maneuvers you get. So, if you get at least 3 successes, the first one lets you run, the second one lets you jump, the third one lets you stab. You do a fixed amount of damage, and that's the tweet. Now, if an enemy defends against it and gets their own successes, they take away from yours. So if you rolled 4 successes and they got 2, you get to run, you get to jump, and then they parry you. And if they happen to get more successes than you, they might even get a counterattack in, which would suck, but it keeps things relatively fair. And there are a whole host of combat maneuvers that are specially designed with a string of actions that you utilize to try and do something really cool and inflict a bunch of damage. And you can choose those at character creation.
My personal favorite of that one is power grab, press, spin.
Family jewel thief.
That's amazing after having not played this system for a few years. It's just, that's the one. Oh, that's 100% fair. But it wouldn't be an urban fantasy campaign without the ability to do magic and bring a little bit of the lore in. So you have access to a variety of spells if you take the casting edge and the casting skill, allowing you to do a bunch of relatively useful utility things, or maybe you just need to burn a place to the ground.
As one does sometimes.
Yeah, look, things happen. Accidents occur. Misunderstandings just between multiple parties get out of hand. It's a thing.
Daily occurrences.
And while you'll have the opportunity to basically play your human for a good portion of the campaign descended from your dragon, it is very easy to work in your dragon's story to the campaign as well and build it into the actual overarching plot of the campaign. And you can do that by having the ability to create the dragon that you are descended from and having a flashback moment that your GM will pick at an appropriate time where you get to be the full badass version of yourself. And boy, it's a power trip. Like, you go from, well, I'm my X reincarnation and I remember maybe 40% of what made me a dragon, to, so this is what it's like to be a god among men. And it's just excellent. And the nice thing is you can build your character in a variety of directions while still being in a very structured environment, which is appreciated because it makes character creation flow quickly, but you don't necessarily feel constrained by it. And it's easy to get more powerful later, so if you're descended from, say, a fireworm who breathes fire, you can level that legacy portion up if that's what you decide you want to do, and you spend however much karma you want, which is your currency for magic and legacies, to make it as big or small or flashy as you want.
Mm-hmm.
So, the character I got to play was basically a walking tank who could take no damage and was the bane of Nathan's existence.
It was fun trying to find ways to murder him. I hit nukes and decided that was about it.
I took 2 wounds from an up-close nuclear blast.
You could have always exploded the sun, but
I
that would
could
have
have,
ended the campaign.
but I
right
wanted to kill him, not everyone.
In fairness, the list of things that you dropped on this ex-Valkyrie, you dropped an Amish hotel on her head. You blew up a gas station.
I did.
We had the nuclear blast. We slalomed down a mountain in what was effectively an armored semi.
Yep.
And that only just scrapes the tip of the iceberg for the number of ways that this poor character who only wanted to protect others from harm just kept getting subjected to the worst things ever.
Never in my life have I heard a more vile lie than a poor character who wanted to protect people.
It became a game. If he kills me, I win, and he knows that.
I was perfectly willing to play, and I still lost.
So, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Fireborn.
Well, I have played Fireborn a few times. I think I actually introduced you to the system. I think I introduced you to the system as well. And the times that I've played Fireborn, it's very, very easy to be the whole, I am a god amongst men. But at the same time, you're not the only dragon waking up stuck in a human body going, this is soft and squishy. I don't like it. The one big gripe I have about Fireborn is that if you are not playing a walking tank, or if you are not playing with another ability called Undying Serpent, which basically allows you to reform your body and lost limbs from the largest piece of your skull left. Just regrow. Guns hurt a lot. Like, the guns, I understand what they were doing with it. It's like, guns are scary, guns are terrifying, but at the same time, if you get shot, you usually die in one round. I expect that from 40k. I don't expect that when I'm playing a dragon.
That's fair, but remember, you're playing a reincarnated version of a dragon, so...
Still dragon.
Gun... That's kind of the pro and con of playing an urban fantasy this true to life is that we're set in the distant future of, I think, 2025.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So, guns, if a regular person is shot by a gun, it's gonna be a bad time for them.
I understand that.
But
It's just-
mechanically,
that's
it's
my
rough.
gripe.
Yeah.
Plus, there isn't really so much of a mechanic for like dodge or cover or much of anything else like that, at least that I've explored in the system or seen in the system. It's you get shot, take it and like it.
Your options for that are going to come back to water dice, usually at pulling a bunch from your earth pool in all likelihood, because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
probably already spending your fire and air dice to retaliate or to initiate the conflict, depending on what led you to where you are in the campaign.
Yeah. The one thing that I do like about it is that you make your dragon first, generally. At least the way that I did it.
You
I
can do it
made
either
my
way.
dragon. I made my dragon first, and then I made my human after it. And then the skills you have as a dragon are the skill caps you can have for your human. So it makes it really easy to see, okay, well, I'm this far away from getting that many points in jump. I had 8 as a dragon, I'm at 7 now. So I can go ahead and just bump that up and be done with it. It's something that's sort of a nice little anecdote in there that I enjoyed.
It's a layer of immersion to the whole. You're reincarnated, so you're not necessarily going to be better than your best self.
Personally, when I've worked with the system, I have really enjoyed the amount of customization that you can do with the dragons. Because they don't just have, like, breeds and you pick your breed and you're done. No, they've got the breeds and then they've got all these little physical features that you can add. And it's a whole thing, and if you are doing that before you make your character, it can really help to kind of get an idea of, okay, what were you? Take away all the things that make this special, what sort of person is left?
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that, and the sheer variety of powers is also wonderful. Like, in D&D, a lot of the time you'll have a whole bunch of spells that do basically the same thing. They hurt a dude, or they hurt a couple of dudes. And if you've been working with the system for long enough, sometimes it can feel kind of like, okay, I'm just doing the most damage. Because a lot of them just kind of work very similarly.
Fireball.
In Fireborn, everything is unique. They put a lot into that because that is the big thing. It's the stuff you get from being a dragon. So, like, you might be able to walk through the earth. You might be able to teleport. You might be indestructible. You might be able to breathe poison clouds. You might be able to control the oceans. There's a huge variety, and I think that it comes together very well in the system.
I agree. So, I know we keep hitting systems you haven't played a whole bunch, and I apologize for that.
I mean,
I don't.
compare it. I know you don't. But you apologize for nothing. That's why we always come after you when it's our turn to DM.
I know what I'm about.
That's
I
why I
appreciate
stabbed you last game.
In fairness, I am the relative rookie to the table. I'm 5 years in, I think. You guys are all quite a bit past that, but yeah. I mean, don't have much out to this. I remember these stories you were telling of, well, what Nathan tried to do to you today? He dropped a gas station on me and it exploded. No damage. Alright, next day. He dropped a skyscraper on me. I walked out the front door.
I forgot about the skyscraper.
Oh, hey,
So did I.
a nuclear blast only did 2 minor damage. I assume he's either stopping or TPKing you the next week.
So, what kind of dragon would you imagine yourself playing in Fireborn?
Oh. I would try to make a dragon that was as close to the Norse trouble god Loki as possible. Because I imagine there were some combinations that would just be delightful.
Oh, it can be done. Very easily. Very easily can be done.
It's like Adonis, but in dragon form. To go
Honestly-
back to about 5
honestly-
campaigns.
It's genuinely difficult once you get far enough in that book to not do that.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's
Fair enough.
if you're trying to make somebody that is like, I just want to be a normal person, you can't. It does not happen. You cannot just be, I want to be a normal dragon. There is no normal dragon. You can take fire breathing and just be like a regular dragon. Guess what? At some point, you're picking up some magic that does something stupid.
Ooh, yeah.
Like makes you go ethereal, so you can just float through things and have trains whiz through your skull for no damage, just for funsies.
Ah, that's what PJ was talking about.
Nope.
Yeah.
It is indeed. So, we've talked a lot about structured systems that are either really crunchy or
Semi-crunchy.
semi-crunchy. So,
Or a wet bowl of cereal.
I mean,
I would say that it's a wet bowl of cereal, but it's freshly poured. There's still a little bit of crunch in there.
So it's been sitting for like 2 minutes.
A minute and a half.
And then we came to me.
What do you got for us?
Over the Edge, which I will start out with, is kind of the story of two systems, because there is the book, and then there is the permission in the book to take the mechanics and ignore everything else, which is exactly what I did when I ran a campaign for you guys. So a little bit of background for people not familiar with this, and that would be extreme. It's a very cult following type system. There's a small group of people who like this immensely, and even among them, half of them like the book content, half of them like the mechanics, and then just go do their own thing. And so this was developed, I believe, by the same people who developed Vampire the Masquerade, and obviously this was not the one that took off.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But in the core books, you basically have a very insane island, Amara, I butchered the pronunciation, but you have a nice tropical island, and think of it as 1984 meets party version of Cancun meets dystopian bureaucracy. And that weirdness is together. And there are certain elements of it I like in the setting. Like, that baboon there, maybe it's just a baboon. Maybe it's been trained to be hired muscle for security. Or maybe it'll start talking to you. All of these are options in the system. It is that wide open. Other backgrounds I think are kind of hilarious is you have to have a license for everything, but the licenses are simple. Like, if you have a license, all drugs are the same. If you have a license to register drugs, which you need to run a coffee shop, because caffeine, you say, hello, do you want extra caffeine with that, or would you like crystal meth? Because they're both drugs, so it's the same thing. If you have a license for one, you have a license for the other. If someone offers you a cup of coffee and they don't have that license, that they're as busted as much as if they have 20 kilos of cocaine on them. And there are details like that which I just find hilarious.
Jeez.
And since you have Big Brother, you'll see campaigns where there is a phone call of, yeah, remember when you lied to that person in front to sneak by them because your party had to get in somewhere? No big deal. No one knows that you get done scot-free. But then the DM reminds you, hey, you rolled a 3, and a 3 is always bad news, and you didn't re-roll it. So you get a phone call from the nearest payphone. Someone picks it up, asks if any of you are so-and-so. You hear, hey, you said you were this and this. Yeah? Do you have a license for that? No. That's fine. You need to come in and talk to the tourism board because that is a violation of our policy. And then you have a decision to make. Big Brother spotted you, and now he's called you out on it. And so the setting is something that I would definitely play with. It's something I would like to go with. For the book itself, I will say if you like structured books, this is not your system. The book is insane. At least one of you said, there's 3 pages here about the guy talking lovingly about his dice as unintelligible. And I'm like, read pages 30 through 32, read 40 through 45, read the mechanics, ignore the rest. And that was how I handled it. But what I love about the system is it lets you do anything in any type of setting you want. And the reason I even found this, and by the way, Loading Ready Run has a great campaign of this called Spring Break, if you want to see how it works in the actual campaign following the book. But the reason I even found this system was I was searching for a steampunk system. Do you know how many great steampunk systems there are out there?
Not many.
I found none. So...
I found one that was kind of okay, and that's it.
it might be the same one, 'cause I had one, and I was like, maybe it's okay, and I looked into it, and was like, maybe not.
Might be the same one.
And so I ran into this one, I was like, okay, because I wanted a world where the magic in the D&D world was kind of fading away and moving to technology, but in a very steampunk fashion. So you were making an adjustment, but things would still look very different and very interesting from a conventional world. Yeah, there's flight, but it's all hot air balloons and airships, because how else would you build something? Of course, everything is coal-powered. What else would it be? And so the thing I loved about Over the Edge was the dice system was so simple. Everybody has a d6. It is the standard die. And if you have 2 of them, you can play this game. And there are not many systems that are just that straightforward. You have 2 dice. If you roll a 6, it's good or neutral. If you roll a 7, you pass. 3s are always bad. 4s are always good. If you have 2 3s, that's a disaster and your DM is smiling. If you have 2 4s, that's a crit success and he has to give you something. And I love the fact that it's just kind of easy that way. It's like, plus the players get 3 rerolls a session. DM has the ability to ask each player to reroll a dice. I put in the rule that if it was a total disaster or total crit, you just didn't mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I loved about it was I even said, when you do these rolls and stuff, so you can succeed but have a minor bad thing happen. Or you can fail a roll but still have something good come out of it. And so it really opened up the world. And it was very cooperative. Like, I am not going to kill your player. If you roll like a double disaster, be like, Ben, okay, wow, you screwed that up.
Generally.
So it's a double disaster. What do you think is an appropriate punishment for the situation? And then we would actually work out what the appropriate punishment would be. And I love that because it was a very cooperative story. And I think that's the strength of it. That's also the potential weakness. With a table like us where everybody had DM'd, everybody was an experienced player, everyone comes in good faith, it creates some amazing story moments where we could work out different things. And, well, how about this as an issue? You lose a hand. Because you select the character, you don't want to lose him, but you made a decision you even said was a bad one, and then you biffed. But with one hand, you can still... Oh, I take a strength bonus? No, it's a one-hand weapon. You still be fine.
Yeah.
And so we just would work around that. And so with that, you want a steampunk world? Worked fine, because everyone had 2d6. Give them some advantages, give them some traits. Did you want to do science fiction? You could do that. If you want to do pirates, you could do that. The one thing I really like about the Over the Edge system is, if you just take the dice mechanics of it, it is very, very easy to figure out once you get rolling. And I think it's really clever having that little extra of, oh, we succeeded, crap, I rolled a 3. Do I want to re-roll that when I'm successful? Looking at Shane staring at me as I look at the table. Or do I want to take the minor bad thing with my success? And you have to gauge it, because you could re-roll and then fail the roll.
Yeah.
Or maybe you get a double success. And we had a few times where a person rolled a failure into a success. We had 1 or 2 where it went the other way, and, well, nothing bad happened with your success, but you don't succeed anymore either. And the versatility of that, the only other system I can think of that even comes close is maybe Fate. And from personal experience, screw those minus dice with like 6 sides and somehow 8 minuses and 1 plus. I hate them. Just some personal history there. But for an experienced group who is willing to tell a group story, who's not afraid to chip into that, I felt it was a super engaging way to dive into the world. Because along with the Game Master, you had a lot of control about where things were going, what happened good, what happened bad. You could discuss what you thought was a fair balance. And once again, that is the plus and minus. If everyone's in good faith around the table and has some experience, there are some really awesome moments even in that really short campaign. It's not for beginners. It's not a system for people who need structure, because there is none. I mean, to be honest. It's more homebrew than Nate's homebrew campaigns. So, and it's one I probably would not break out even with experienced players if I didn't know the table well. is you have to be able to have an open communication because it's a lot more weight for being able to improv and it's a lot more weight to be able to storytell. But if you have the right group to pull that off, you also have the ability with Over the Edge to do campaigns or stories that do not fit into any other system you look at. And to me, that's especially exciting. Also, wasn't it funny that he was the expert driver and he could not pass? He just rolled 3s after 3 after 3.
It was ridiculous. You went for like what? 2 rounds and then crashed into a lamppost. Meanwhile, me and the other guy are busy shooting up all the rest of the mafia, and we've got the MacGuffin, and we almost make it. The only reason we didn't is because Shane went, "No, you're done."
In fairness, my helper on the quote-unquote turret was Nathan, who decided that it was going to be a better idea to pull out an invention, biff the use of the invention, and suddenly our car was filling with foam.
This is what you
In
get for
all
riding with a
fairness-
noble. Riding with a
In all
you a
fairness,
knoll?
yes, I was a knoll. I was
That's
a
right,
knoll
yeah.
engineer making steampunk gadgets. And in all fairness, I spent most of that inside of a cube jelly,
That's
getting
what you
high
mean
off
to-
of vehicle off of the frickin' exhaust. Do your job.
Great seeing the system allowed a steampunk weapon that shot a dart, which became a cube from 5e, a gelatinous cube, that then filled up the back of the truck, pulling the coal exhaust steam and affecting him as he could not break out. And Braden opening the little side thing to see what's going on, seeing gelatinous cube start spilling in, deciding nope, and then biffing the next drive test again.
I was a little distracted.
And yeah, and it was just, they were wonderful story moments. A lot of time I prefer a little bit of structure, but if a little more even for me. But if you like the improv, or if you really have a good group, like I said, you can create unique story points that just aren't going to come from another campaign. Because as long as all of us know how to roll 2d6s, and I think we have that down at this point, it's a surprisingly simple dice system that lets you do so much to keep things interesting. And to me, that's a really super cool mechanic that you really haven't quite seen the equivalent of yet.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you know what you're doing, it's almost instant to pick up how it works.
Yeah.
Because how
Yeah.
it works is, I want to do a thing, roll your dice. And then you do that, then you figure out if you did the thing or not. And
Mhm.
how bad it's going to be. And it is extremely simple, but can get absolutely insane depending on the roles and the decisions that people
Yeah.
make.
And I think there was one session where it seemed like every failure had a 4, meaning something good had to happen on a failure. And like every success had a 3, meaning something bad had to happen with a success. And that got, you'd think convoluted, but it just got so interesting so quickly because stuff just kept happening.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous.
I mean, it was the epitome of that writing advice where they're like, okay, your character gets something good, make sure you add a but. Something bad happens, make sure you add a but. And it was just that with every single decision.
That entire session, every roll. Huh.
Yeah. Your imaginary friend found you a useful item. Well, that's good. And then he says, look at the friendly ghost I found. Roll initiative for combat. Oh.
I forgot about Ghost Tim. He brought friends.
Fucking
Those
things.
friends tried to murder us.
And so, and for what we did for combat, a lot was the d6s, and we throw in stuff as I felt fit, like have a +1 to the dice roll for armor, or, well, I'm an expert in this one area. Cool, instead of taking a 7 to do the stunt, you only need to roll a 6.
Mhm.
And I like that. It's like, okay, I'll just up or down 1 or 2, depending on the situation, and no matter what came up, all we needed was 2d6. And so, yeah, if you want to roll wildcard 1, and you're like us and you're really fortunate to have a table of good players who played together for years, check it out. The book may or may not be for you. I know there was a very split feeling on the table about the book. I would love to try out that island, but I understand that parts of the book were a freaking mess. Yeah, I got you. But the mechanics are pretty great, and it's worth even trying. And if you're not sure, try it for a one-shot. Get everyone together for a Saturday and throw 6 hours into a weird story you can't fit into any system and just see what happens.
That's true. It's kind of like a Kobolds Ate My Baby sort of system almost.
Yeah.
Where it's like a beer and peanuts sort of thing. You all grab your favorite beverage, grab some snacks, and then just have fun.
Yeah. And just see what happens out of it, and you are sure to get at least one story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
So, excellent. So, plenty of opportunity. So, thank you everyone for joining us. You now have 4 wonderful, wonderful systems outside of 5e. And so, what are your favorite systems? What have we missed? Are there Pathfinder fans who are pouting in the corner like Brownie up there because we didn't get to the number crunchy one? Ha! It's okay, buddy. It's okay. It just wasn't top 4. Sorry. And yeah.
Or 5.
Those are the comments I'll get as hate mail. He always said I'd be the one to do it. But these
Turns
are
out I was right.
We love the systems. We love the stories. What's your favorite one? When did things go off the rail in a hilarious way? What characters do you have in memorable stories here? So please subscribe if you haven't already. Check out our website and Patreon. Give us a nice little follow. Tell us those awesome stories. And as always, good gaming. Bye.
See you next time.
If you like what you just saw, please support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more great gaming content.